this morning I will be sharing with you a few thoughts and memes. We're talking about the dark side of psychedelics, and to close this beautiful morning, hopefully I'll be able to do it a little bit darker and also somewhat funny. I do want to ask, my first language is not English, obviously, and I do get nervous in situations. If at some point I just start going blah, 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 just raise your hand, okay, and remind me to slow down, and I will do my best to do so. Yeah, great. So I think in our previous presentations, both Maytha was talking a little bit about the setting, which I think is a good place to start. I only have so much time. I have to really narrow down what it is that I want to focus on. And I think one way that we could define what it is that the subject, maybe the next 25 minutes are going to be, has to do with setting. I think by now all of us already, psychedelic discourse has grown to the point where we all know more or less what we mean when we say setting. Setting has all sorts of different dimensions. If you are a psychedelic practitioner in some sense of that word, whether you're running retreats or ceremonies or integration sessions or whatever, then we do have a good sense that setting is important, right? We mostly refer to the physical spaces, like we know how to set up a room and to make it comfortable and safe and so on and so forth. But there are other aspects of that setting that we don't discuss very often. I think, at least I feel that we don't discuss very often, and that is one of those components is the subject of this talk, and that component is more what I call the narrative or the discursive dimension of the setting, or the setting more particularly, which basically means what are the stories that we tell about what these things are, what they are for, when it comes to like different drugs, different plant medicines, but also just more in general, the words that we use, right? Oftentimes it's almost kind of like, when we talk about ayahuasca or mushrooms, we oftentimes refer to plant medicines, even though mushrooms, of course, are not plants. But the word medicine, right, is already kind of like become a household name for these things. But the word medicine is not neutral, right? When we talk about medicine, we're already implying something about that particular substance or that particular intent. Yes, slow down, thank you. Medicine. Like medicine implies that we have an intent of using a substance in a particular way that has to do with using it as medicine, which implies that there's something that perhaps we want to heal, which implies already there's something broken. Right? There's a degree of brokenness that we already come with the intention of healing through the use of a medicine. And sure, these are medicinal plants in many ways. In the original context, ayahuasca, which is at least the one that I have more experience with in the original context, and also mushrooms in many Mexican traditions, for example, are used as medicines, but not exclusively, right? It's just one particular aspect of a much broader set of social, cultural, political, spiritual, and social uses that those plants may have. I'm just talking a lot. Let's move on with the slides. So the discursive narrative dimension of setting, like what are the stories that we tell about these things and why that matters, right? So this is one of the memes that went viral. I just kind of reworked it to make more sense for this particular place. So one of the stories that we share a lot about the healing journey, right? Like when we use medicines, we are healing. There's a healing journey that is happening that is also contingent with kind of like the stories that we tell about it. Another way of conceptualizing what are the stories that we tell about things is kind of like something that I call the cultural soup, right? We're all swimming in cultural soup. Whether you realize it or not, you are swimming in cultural soup. And it's just generally a good idea to have a degree of self-awareness about what are the ingredients, right, that make that cultural soup that we're all swimming in. So, as a general sense, the main ingredients, for example, would be the main ideologies that are kind of like part of our societies and our cultures, right? We have we have neoliberalism, we have consumerism, we have a focus on the individual that is very much prominent, right? Like we hyper-focus on the individual as kind of like the main unit of agency, right? In all of these things. And that translates immediately also to things like healing. Like when we talk about healing, our ideas of what it means to be happy and healthy oftentimes are emergent from the underlying ideologies or ingredients in that cultural soup. Meitha was sharing before about how, for example, there are many aspects of Amazonian shamanism that are sanitized or hygienized in modern retreat centers, right? If you look at the marketing copy of a retreat center, oftentimes you will find ayahuasca is a medicine that will help you heal your childhood trauma, but you will not really find ayahuasca is a tool that is used by sorcerers to inflict harm on other people, because that wouldn't sell many retreats, would it? Right? Like people wouldn't necessarily sign up for your retreat if you're already saying like, hey, like this thing is used by brujos and sorcerers to cause harm, which is true, right? The Amazonian shamanism is a very, very complex set of practices, but it, in many ways it boils down to a particular worldview, a particular idea of a cosmology, right, of who has agency in that world and what it means to be healthy and happy, such as we have also our own ideas of what it means to be happy and healthy. And to narrow it down, again, I'm just going to be kind of like lighting through these slides as much as I can to get through some of these ideas. When we have these ideas of what it means to be happy and healthy, right, oftentimes because of the underlying ideologies or belief systems that give rise to those ideas, we do find certain things that are very prevalent. For example, in healing culture, which is what I kind of like term this cultural soup that we're all swimming in our substance and so on and so forth, within healing culture, there is an idea that part of the healing journey has to do with finding the root causes of things, right? There's a sort of chronology of different ideas of root causes that have happened in the past and leading to the present that have given all sorts of different ideas of where illness arises from. So we have, for example, in the beginning, right, we had, for example, this idea of religion or spirituality, where oftentimes illness is ascribed to some sort of metaphysical or religious thing, like a demon possession or so on, right? So if you are ascribing to that particular worldview, then you will look for where the demon is and how to get the demon out. And then we move on to all sorts of other things. For example, in alternative medicine, we have with chiropractic the spinal subluxation. Let me see. And then we move on to something else like repressed emotions, right? Then childhood trauma. Nowadays, if you're tuned into healing culture, you probably are aware that the current hot thing has to do more with parasites, right? Like ivermectin is everywhere. Everybody's selling cleansing protocols and so on and so forth. Natasha was talking before about a few different facilitation cliches that are very interesting, right? Because many of them are universal to many of the different root causes. Oftentimes we say, like the medicine knows exactly how to work with you, or the medicine never gives you more than you can take, or never tests you beyond your own limits. All of these cliches can be traced back oftentimes to other sources. They're not exclusive to plant medicine work. They're also just general religious, spiritual things that people will say in different ways. We have, when we go to the chronology of the root causes, we move on from the demon possession, the spinal subluxation. I don't know if you guys remember Louise Hay. She had like this very popular encyclopedia of correlations between different diseases or things that can afflict a person, and they correlate with emotional things, right? Like repressed emotions or things that we haven't really worked through in our emotional life. There's a really interesting booklet. It's like really like this thick, and there's all sorts of different things, right? Like Alzheimer originates from a refusal to deal with the world as it is, cancer, deep hurt, genital herpes, mass belief in sexual guilt, and so on. And the interesting thing is, like in this worldview of root causes, these things are not only correlates, they're etiologies, right? Like these are the things that give rise to that particular affliction or disease. The next one, moving on from the root causes of the repressed emotions, is of course holistic psychology and psychotherapy in all sorts of different ways. I mean, it's a caricature. All of these means are caricatures. Caricatures are grotesque on purpose, right? They accentuate something. in order to deliver a point. But we have the hat, okay, very, very important part of the costume, the hands always in the chest, right, like very solemn. There's a solemnity that happens when we drop into our body and check in with what we're feeling. And again, like when I talk about root causes, it's not necessarily that these things are not real or that these things have not an impact. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people here who do feel like, you know, certain repressed emotions will have an impact in the etiology of certain illnesses or diseases. This is not to say that it doesn't. I'm talking about root causes, which, you know, another word of saying that is reductionism. Like when we're reducing, I don't know how the word works, reducing, right, things that have complexity, that have social dimensions and have physical dimensions and have genetic dimensions and have all sorts of different dimensions. We're reducing them to one particular only thing, right? And that can be oftentimes not ideal for many reasons. Because we're giving away the complexity of things. Yeah, and again, I mean, if in the beginning, kind of like talking about the cultural soup, and one of the main things that creates that cultural soup, this idea that the individual is the main unit, right? Like the individual is the main point of agency in any sort of transformation that we want to create, whether it's in the world or in our own particular health. Root causes, in that sense, always pertain more or less to the individual person, right? These are things that we can work on ourselves. They are encapsulated, we can say encapsulated within me, the individual. But afflictions, whether they're physiological, medical, psychological, emotional, oftentimes, again, like they're not encapsulated in the individual experience. They have very important components or dimensions that relate to our relationship with the world, right? Our relationship with community, our relationship with society, our relationship with culture, our relationship with the environment at large. We're talking about Shipibo culture, right? Shipibo etiologies are very different in that sense because they actually don't pertain only to the individual person. They're always, well, I mean, I'm not going to say always, but they primarily and majorly relational, right? If you go to a Shipibo person who is helping you with something, and they're going to diagnose you with something, right? The etiology of affliction in that sense, the origin of affliction, disease, illness never happens in a vacuum. Right? In the Amazonian worldview, everything is located in relationship. Illness, if a person becomes ill, okay, it's not just because they became ill for no reason, it's because somebody else wanted them ill. Yeah? There's somebody else, there's an external agency who wished them to get sick or ill. Now, how that works, of course, has to do with the ideas of who is a person and who has agency and who has intentionality and who is intelligent and who can cause things to happen in that particular way. In Amazonian traditions, of course, personhood is not confined to human people. There's human people, but of course, there's also non-human people, right? There's tree people, and there's all sorts of different plant peoples and animals peoples and rock people and river people. And all of these people have the same human attributes that we share. I mean, again, intentionality, agency, and so on and so forth. So, you know, if a person gets ill, the first thing that the Shipibo healer, Onaya, will investigate is who made that person ill. Right? Like what happened? What happened that caused that person to get ill? Oftentimes, this is a breach in reciprocity, for example, right? There's a strong eco-social awareness that underlies this idea, right? Or this medical understanding of etiology. So, you know, it can be that the person got ill because envious brujo made them ill. This happens all the time in the Amazon. It's a very violent, socially violent system, right, of like envy and jealousy and sorcery and so on and so forth. But there's other things, right, like cutipado or cupia, which is a Amazonian, Pan-Amazonian almost diagnose, which basically, again, it relates to some sort of breach in reciprocity between that person and the world at large. For example, you hunted somebody who you weren't supposed to hunt at the wrong time of the year or in the wrong place in the jungle, right? Like these things are very much regulated. Again, strong eco-social awareness underlying that. So if a person hunts somebody, again, somebody because they are persons, right? Like even the tapir or the jaguar or the wangana, like everybody is a person. They have the same attributes as we do. If you hunt somebody out of place, then you may get ill because you have breached those agreements of reciprocity. If you walk under the wrong tree at the wrong time of the day, I don't know why that happens. There's reasons for it that I'm unaware of. But if you walk under the wrong tree in the wrong part of the forest, then you might get ill, right? Because you've breached an agreement of reciprocity with that particular spirit or that particular person. So it's very different, what I'm trying to say, okay? Very different ways of understanding etiology, the origin of illness or disease. One side, we have hyper-individualistic, human-centered things that happen to us encapsulated apart from our relationships with our community, our society, our culture, and environment. And the other side, etiologies that are almost exclusively rooted in our relationships, right, with the world at large. So we were talking about root causes, that's why. So yes, childhood trauma, right? We have we went from repressed emotions to childhood trauma, psychoanalysis, and so on and so forth. And again, I mean, I think it's an incredibly important topic. I think the awareness of how adverse events in our childhood affect us later in life is, very important, of course. But again, when we're using reductivist lenses to just look at one thing and then work our way back from whatever it is that we're suffering from to correlate that to a particular root cause, we may be missing a lot of other things, right? And this is, like this chronology of root causes is very, very rife within healing culture for several reasons. The hat. We're talking about the hat of the official costume of the. I kind of like. The original slide said something different. It said Topanga, California, because that's where I spend a lot of time recently. But somebody told me that maybe for the UK context this would be better. But I mean, you can see. I mean, it's actually this is a meme that also went viral. The women in the photo actually were very happy. They reshared it, and they were happy to go viral. They were a good sport, is what I'm trying to say. But there's only one woman really that doesn't wear the official costume. We were trying to, through the internet, we were trying to find her and then deliver a hat so she can also wear a hat. Yes, so the official hat. I don't know if you guys watched the White Lotus. Good show. I didn't like the last season as much as I like the other ones. It was not a very popular opinion. People kind of grilled me for it. But anyway, it was a very good show for memes. It gave us a lot of really good meme formats. And again, I mean, so, her expression is priceless. I love that expression. She's very good. She has like three like really good memes from her facial expressions that were great. So yeah, I mean, she's telling, the facilitator or whoever is telling you your chronic autoimmune symptoms are due to unresolved childhood trauma. Again, we're talking about reductionism, okay? We're talking about a situation where, I mean, I've been in this situation many times. I facilitated retreats for many, many years, and I have met all sorts of different characters who had all sorts of different ideas about root causes, right? And how do we apply those ideas about root causes when we're actually working with people? Because this can be very tricky. Because for some people, that might be like, yes, this is the epiphany that is going to change my life. I completely agree with this, and I'm healed or whatever. For other people, this might be like, okay, well, that doesn't really resonate, right? Like resonance, it doesn't really resonate with me, and I just feel gaslit. And if the facilitator is unable to move away from their own ideas of root causes, then they were going to keep gaslighting that person because, no, your chronic autoimmune symptoms are definitely due to unresolved childhood trauma, even if you don't see it. Is it? Maybe. Again, maybe there's more complexity to it, right? Autoimmune disorders have all sorts of different complexities that have to do with all sorts of different things, perhaps, other than just childhood trauma. I'm not saying that this is wrong, okay? I'm saying that this is not always right. And if we're unable to see the difference between sometimes right and always right, then we may be doing a big disservice to the people that we're working with. This doesn't only apply to childhood trauma. This applies to 1,000 other things that become kind of like root causes. The worst person you know learn therapy words, okay? Just kind of like a nod to the rampant weaponization of therapy language, right? We can very easily misuse those words and weaponize them in ways that are maybe less than ideal. Chronology of root causes. Okay, so we went demon possession, spinal subluxation, repressed emotions, childhood trauma, the current hype cycle. I don't know how many of you guys are really like tapped into internet culture. Probably varying degrees, some more, some less. If you are tapped into internet culture, particularly wellness, online culture, okay, then you may have noticed in the last month or so, okay, these cycles happen fast. Internet culture moves very quickly. In the last month or so, we have the parasite cycle, okay? Everybody's talking about parasites. Everybody's selling parasite cleanses. Ivermectin is the medicine of choice for the age of parasites, of course. Everybody wants prescriptions. Everybody's offering prescriptions. I don't know in the UK how regulated these things are, but in other places it's not as easy to just go and buy ivermectin. I live in Mexico most of the time, very easy to get. I spend a lot of time in the US, not as easy to get, right? Varying degrees of access to ivermectin. But parasites, right? I mean, the same thing that we saw before with Louise Hay and her emotional etiologies, now we can see with parasites. Anything from cancer to anxiety to psoriasis, eczema, whatever, colitis, okay? Everything is parasites. Is that true? Probably not. Maybe some things are due to parasites, maybe some aren't. But, you know, a list of things are definitely due to parasites in order to sell a parasite cleanse, maybe not ideal for a lot of people. We have, well, I mean, this is kind of like an extreme example, but it's a good segue into something else that I want to talk about, okay? It's not a coincidence that microscopic parasites make people gay and gender confused, and Marxist banking parasites make people gay and gender confused too. This is art, people. This is just art, right? We are making a segue into something very important, okay, which is root causes from the individual, okay, individual illness and disease, into social root causes, okay? Or another way of putting social root causes is conspiracism, okay? Conspiracism or conspiracy epistemics. Either one of those two terms are good terms that I like to use to differentiate what I actually mean from conspiracy theories, okay? This is a very touchy subject for a lot of people because many of us in our particular subcultures, healing culture, psychedelic culture, and so on, are very prone to conspiracism, okay? And when I talk about conspiracism, I like to make that distinction, okay, that I'm not denying that conspiracies exist in the world, okay, they sure do. People in power conspire behind closed doors all the fucking time to do nefarious things. I'm talking about conspiracism or conspiracy epistemics as a sense-making framework, okay, that is oftentimes used exclusively by people who ascribe to conspiracism, where everything that happens in the world or anything that might happen in the world is filtered through the conspiracism framework, which again is another one of those reductive and reductionist frameworks that oftentimes give away with complexity. So, you know, we have, if we move from the individual to the collective, we have also reductionism translated to politics, and again, conspiracism, populism, demagoguery nowadays. You know, the root cause can be all sorts of different things. Nowadays, it's very, at least in the, you know, across the pond, immigrants are the root cause of everything right now. The globalists, the elites, the Illuminati. I don't know how deep you have gone into like actual conspiracism, but if you do like a sober analysis of things, oftentimes at the top of everything or underneath everything is the Jews. Okay, the Jews are always, you know, when you hear people talk about globalists, elites, you know, whatever, it's always kind of like a euphemism. This is historically has been true, at least in that sense. Action figures, people get upset about AI. I think I also don't like it anymore. I think it was fun for a while, but I think, well, I mean, it's a whole other conversation. But just to say that I also don't approve of myself using AI to make this stuff, and I will not do that again. Okay? Tricky, it's a tricky thing. I love technology, and definitely makes life easy in some ways, but at the same time, I kind of come to terms that the real cost of these things is just not very worthwhile just to make some people laugh every once in a while. There's other ways of doing that. So yeah, the truth I don't want you to know. Well, there's all sorts of different memes that kind of like play in that same theme, right? I mean, I don't know, again, like how tapped we're into the culture, okay? But if you are tapped into the culture, I mean, these things are self-evident. Okay, these are pipelines that have existed for a few years. I think things kind of like exacerbated a lot with 2020. The COVID pandemic, right, was kind of like one of those moments where conspiracism exploded in our scenes. Okay, these things have never really been separated from each other. I think we don't. I only have 5 minutes. Jesus. Yeah, I mean, this can go on for a while, but maybe later on you can catch me outside, or you can just go to the page and go through these things if you're interested in it. But it was kind of like an historical moment where things that were always there just became very visible. Okay, there's even a word that became very prominent since, conspirituality. Okay, if you have been in this world for a while, you already know that conspiracism and New Age spirituality have always been hand in hand. This is not something new, except people started naming it more and analyzing more in depth and with honesty from the 2020 COVID ordeal and so on and so forth. So, we do have pipelines that are very unfortunate, that go from New Age spirituality towards reactionary politics, that go from psychedelics to right-wing populism, all sorts of things that are not necessarily maybe the ideal outcomes for the things that we want to create in the world, and yet they are ingrained in our subcultures because we don't examine those narratives very well. We haven't been very good at, again, being self-aware about what are the ingredients in the cultural soup that we're swimming in. And if we're not very well aware of what are the ingredients in the soup that we're cooking, then we're not going to be able to control for the outcomes that we're producing, right, as a result of the narratives and stories that are prominent within those cultures. What do we have? Well, more immigrants to the job. Let's see. So, sorry. I mean, again, immigrants are one of the root sources right now, right? Like people get really mad about immigrants. We don't really, we don't like immigrants anymore. This meme formats that went viral, and this is objectively a really funny picture. It's a real picture. It's objectively very funny, like even without any context, even without any caption. Okay, like a whole campaign of "Make America Healthy Again," and then the first picture that they post is just eating McDonald's in an airplane. I mean, this is one thing about the current cycle of American politics is that they're terrifying, but also objectively very funny. I put this on the internet and asked people to caption it, and we had like really funny stuff. I think it's too small for you to read, but they're just like you can look at that later if you want in the account. Like people came up with like really funny captions for it. It was really a nice experiment in crowdsourcing humor. Memes move very quickly. This was very funny 2 weeks ago. This is not funny today because we already moved past tariffs. Okay? Nobody cares about tariffs anymore. This is 2 weeks ago. This is one thing about internet culture is that it moves very quickly. Okay? If you have a meme format, you have to hit it while it's hot. You have maybe 48 hours, maybe 72 hours to use that format. If you're late past that deadline, you missed it. Okay, this is not fun. If I posted this today, people will be like, what the fuck are you doing with this meme format nowadays? But 2 weeks ago, it was funny. We have 3 minutes. Do you guys like Love is Blind? Do you have that in Britain? No? Yeah, reality show, funny people trying to hook up. I mean, I don't like it either. I don't watch reality TV, but my wife does. She loves this, and she's my better half in every sense, including creatively. She's masterminding pretty much everything behind the scenes. I'm just the asshole, showing my face to the world. But Love is Blind. We made this was also another thing that went viral. We made our own characters with all sorts of people in our subcultures that want to find love and get married and be happy and healthy. So we have Christoph. I'm sure these are caricatures. Okay? These are not based on real people. These are maybe components of real people, or caricatures. Again, they're grotesque on purpose to highlight certain aspects. Right? They're important to notice. There's a saying, I don't know how to say, if you want to tell people the truth, you have to make them laugh. Otherwise, they will kill you. And I think if you Google that, you would probably come up with 1,000 misattributions, because that's how the internet works nowadays. Nobody knows who actually said it. I've never been able to find the original source for it. But it's true. If you want to if you want to tell people the truth, you have to make them laugh. Otherwise, they will kill you. Humor is a good vehicle for showing people dark side. Yeah, like if you want to become more aware of our collective cultural shadows, then humor is a good vehicle because it makes it easier to land. I think I just have 1 minute, so I'm just gonna another play on the holistic psychologist. Gonads is one of my favorites. I don't know if you guys. Who of you ladies who wants to? I mean, he's handsome. He's looking for a pure blood, okay, non-vaxxed queen. Who wants to date Gonad? He understands feminism as a psyop. This. I mean, again, yes, like this is a very big part of our scenes right now. Like this person is anybody, right? Again, this is not necessarily like I'm saying like everything is wrong with all of these characters. I'm just saying like we have to be aware of the cultural soup that we're all swimming in. Vitalik went to Peru. Okay, Mother Ayahuasca told them to make an app so citizens can report homeless people to their police. This very common archetype in the Bay Area in the US, right? Like the tech mogul that like wants to make the world better by doing something horrible, okay? Because the drugs or the plant medicines told them to. Happens all the time. I've met a lot of these people. Is it wrong? I don't know. I mean, let's ask the homeless people. Dr. Lucy also, she did mushrooms and now she microdoses to sell more weapons. Sven, I love Sven, digital nomad. He lives in an Airbnb in Costa Rica or Tulum or Bali or anywhere else that is very cheap and he can, coach you on how to escape the matrix, paying your way with Western currency in a poor country. It's a very good way of escaping the matrix, right? Parminder likes to, the biohacker is kind of like a low-hanging fruit. Javier, the shaman, Storm, the DJ, the daughter of Christ, New Age author, ex-New Age author. This is also a very common thing happening nowadays. If you're tapped into contemporary healing culture, the pipeline from New Age to organized religion is pipelining very heavily. Okay, it's happening a lot. We're seeing a very strong shift back towards organized religions, away from self-spirituality or modern spiritualities and back into organized religion. This is a very important archetype that is very, very prominent right now. I think, all in all, the main thing that I think is very important to realize is how our ideas of the world form. Well, okay, so we're talking very narrowly about healing culture, okay? And what are our ideas of happiness and health, where they originate from, and how they impact how we address the healing journey. So again, we come from a very hyper-individualistic, overarching ideology that will almost always place the locus of transformation. Who here has heard, I'm just gonna finish with this, who here has heard something around the lines of your own personal healing and transformation is the best gift that you can offer the world, okay? Your own personal healing and transformation is the best gift that you can offer the world, right? There is this idea that if we want to change the world, first and foremost, we have to work on ourselves. This is not wrong. I mean, this is good for everybody to work on ourselves. Yeah? Like we do that in all sorts of different ways. But when we take that to the extreme, is what I mean by a never-ending healing journey, okay? And we're in our pursuit for wholeness is based on consumption, right? Like going to another retreat, going to another experience, going to another ecstatic dance, another psychedelic conference, whatever it is. I mean, these things are great, okay? But if we're never able to break the cycle of seeing healing and transformation as basically individualistic consumption, then we're never really paying attention to other things that are equally as important, which are not only our own personal inner experience, but the relationships between us and the world. Okay, there are many things that we suffer from that are actually real root causes of many things that are not located only within ourselves, but in those links between individual and community. Okay, for example, loneliness, okay, alienation, right? These are things that, I mean, loneliness is a major, major, major component of many, many contemporary health risks. And loneliness is not only me. Loneliness is my relationship with the world, right? There are many of us, I will venture to, to make that assertion. There are many of us here who have anxiety about things. And oftentimes that anxiety is undefined. And oftentimes anxiety can very easily be individualized. So there's something wrong with me specifically that I'm anxious about things, okay? But then, you know, when I work with people, for example, and we have like this anxiety about the war and so on, then we start inquiring about, well, you know, look around you. Like, why wouldn't you be anxious? I mean, like, we're at the verge of collapse in so many different ways. Like we're already past many planetary limits in so many ways, environmentally, socially. Things are not looking great. Anxiety makes sense, right? So what I say is, like, we can equally pay attention to our individual healing journey as individuals, but at the same time, we have to be more aware both of the underlying narratives, but also of those intrinsic links between our individual health and well-being, but also the community health and well-being, the social health and well-being, the environmental health and well-being, if you really want to round that up and not be reductionist about things. Thank you. And thanks.